I want you guys to think about what is your goal with investing your money. Is it to have a little bit of passive income flowing through on the side? Is it as a safety net in case one day you lose your job? Or is it like mine to have your dividends totally replace your full-time income? I'm making this video for the people in the last category. And what we're going to do is answer the question, how much do you need invested in order to live off the dividends? So the very first thing you need to decide is how much money do you need coming in each year to live off. You see, some people like myself and Graham Stephen, we don't need that much money to live off. We enjoy the simple things, and we're not about buying the latest shoes or getting regular Starbucks every day. Other people, they just love spending money. They'll go to Starbucks, Louis Vuitton, they'll check Amazon, see if they like anything on there. These people, they need more money from their dividends to live off. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to go with the average person. If we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median wage for workers in the United States is currently $49,764 per year. So let's round that up to the average person lives off around $50,000 per year. Now, I want to be a bit prudent in this video. Remember, living off $50,000, some of that's going to your kids' tuition and food. Some's going to investments. You're not actually using all of that money to live off. So let's say, and I think this is appropriate, that you use around $30,000 of that income to live off each year. So we need $30,000 in dividends to replace that income in order for us to be fully financially free. So what's our goal? How much do we need invested in order to get $30,000 in dividends each year? The first thing that you need to decide is your dividend investing strategy. Are you going to go for the rally high yields, the high risk companies, or are you going to be playing it more safe and go for the lower yields, the low risk companies? I personally prefer to go somewhere in between these two strategies. The companies that I like are generally paying a nice dividend, but also they're using some of their earnings to reinvest in the business. If they're paying out all of their earnings as dividends, I think that's really risky because you got to ask yourself, how are they going to keep growing as a business? Or are they just going to be one of those businesses that fade out after 10 years? I personally want to buy businesses that last a lifetime. For example, Warren Buffett's Coca-Cola. Buffett first started buying shares in Coca-Cola back in 1988, and this was a company that just had a strong business model behind it. Customers loved their products. So Buffett bought big into Coke. By 1989, he had purchased 23.35 million shares worth $1.8 billion. And we all know the story. He's profited $19.4 billion in terms of share price increases, plus he's received $7 billion in terms of dividends. For me, it's a great example between paying dividends and growing the company. So let's get back to our investment strategy. As I say, I like the companies that pay a nice dividend yield and are reinvesting in the business. So the question is, what do we consider a nice dividend yield that we can get in this day and age? To answer this question, we need to look at the big dividend ETFs around the USA. First, we'll start with the S&P Dividend ETF. This follows the S&P 1500 Composite Index that have increased dividends for at least 20 consecutive years. Currently, it yields 2.92%. The biggest dividend ETF is the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF. This tracks the Nasdaq US Dividend Achievers. Currently, that's yielding 2%. Lastly, let's look at another big one, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. This focuses on the higher paying dividend stocks and achieves a yield of 3.6%. So if you average all of those funds' yields, you get 2.84%. Now let's round that number up to 2.9% because I definitely think we can get a yield higher than the average if we invest smartly. But we'll be conservative here and let's say we are average investors and we achieve a dividend yield that's long term around the average. So how much do we need in total invested in order that our dividends fully replace our income? So if you can remember, at the start of the video, we decided that the average person lives off around 30k a year. So we need 2.9% of our total amount invested to equal $30,000. Basically, all we need to do here is some simple algebra. We just divide 30k by 2.9% and we get the figure of $1,034,500. That's just over $1 million saved up and invested in order to retire off our dividends. Now, there's a couple of comments that I want to make on this figure. First of all, a lot of people will think it's unrealistic to save up over $1 million. That's a total lie. Secondly, another group of people will think, hang on, I want to live off a lot more than $30,000 a year, which is a fair point. So let me answer both of those comments. The first thing is this silly statement that I hear people saying, nah, I'll never be able to save up to $1 million. That's way too much money. It's the same group of people who look up at a big mountain and think, oh, that's impossible to climb. What they're really saying is, I don't want to put the effort or the time into climbing this mountain. You see, the one concept that these people don't understand is compound interest. If you invest your money and give it the time it needs to grow, $1 million is a feat that can be achieved by anyone in a first world nation. If you give yourself 40 years, all you need to do is save up $179 per month and you'll reach that figure. 30 years, $481 per month. 20 years, $1,382, and 10 years, that's almost $5,000. If you give yourself enough time, let compound interest do the work, you can definitely reach that $1 million mark. But the key with this is to start as young as you can. Teach your kids this concept and they can retire from dividends when they're extremely young. And let's just say you don't reach that $1 million mark. Let's say you only get to $500,000. Are you really going to be complaining that half of your expenses can now be replaced from dividends? Dividends which you receive for doing absolutely no work. It's not the worst idea to at least have a goal of retiring off dividends, and even if you don't get there, you'll still be in a great financial place. But that brings me to the group of people who say, I want more than the $30,000 a month to live off. That's a total fair point. But my answer to that is, well, you're just going to have to save more. Let's say you want $60,000 a year to live off. Well, for that, you'd need double the amount you needed for 30k. So that's about $2,069,000 total invested. If you wanted to live off $90k a year, you'd need around $3,100,000. It's just simple math. So now, depending on your different expense needs, you know the figure of the total amount invested you need to achieve these goals. The next logical question you should be asking is, how do you build up a strong dividend portfolio? The first thing I'll say to that is ETFs are a great way to start. For those who don't know, ETFs are a collection of stocks that you can buy in essentially one single package. So let's say you buy an ETF like the S&P Dividend ETF, ticker symbol for that is SDY. You now own a bunch of high-quality dividend-paying companies in the S&P 1500. Your yield will be 2.9%. But some of you rightfully will want to pick your own dividend stocks, build up your own portfolio. That's a fine way of investing. The number one thing that I would say to that is make sure your knowledge on investing is strong before you start picking individual stocks. You don't want to be playing poker and not know the rules of poker. You'll end up losing. And it's the same with investing. Once you build up a strong ground game to the basics of investing, then it is time to dip your feet in. Maybe start with stocks similar to Warren Buffett, like Coca-Cola, which has a strong history of paying dividends and has a great business model. Or something like Johnson & Johnson, a great stock with a well-diversified source of revenue streams and just generally a good company. And once you start getting your feet wet, build from there and grow your portfolio. And the very last thing you need to give it is time. Continue adding, continue building your portfolio, and over time, you'll look back, you'll own a bunch of great stocks, and hopefully you'll be able to retire from those dividends.